So we're going to preview the offensive line. It's second to last next week. Quarterbacks, which I'm surprised we haven't gotten a question about the quarterback. I guess everybody's so concerned about whether the season will actually happen. We haven't even gotten a quarterback question yet. So.
Oh, there's still time. We got plenty of time left in this show for somebody to ask about quarterbacks. I think with this offensive line, it's obviously the talent is there. They should be one of the best in the country.
Yeah.
Oregon's probably up there. Alabama, I think Colt Kublik picked Tennessee to be number 2 in the SEC. And they weren't particularly good last year, but I think with what you're returning, you have guys that, played as true freshmen that won't be true freshmen anymore. Hopefully they take a jump. You have a 6th year in Brandon Kennedy at center. And then you add Cade Mays. I think that's the big one. That's if you get him eligible, you have a season. I think the sky's the limit for this group. I think with last year I think they were 12th in rushing yards per game. I think with 144. I think they're second to last in yards per carry, like 4.1. I think Missouri was last with 3.8. But I think your backs are going to be more improved. I think with Eric Gray being just more dynamic, a whole off season behind him, I think that's going to be huge. And hopefully quarterback play is improved, and I think that just helps this offensive line get to accomplish the goals of what they want to do.
Yeah, I think this is going to be one of your more consistent units that you return. You return all 5 starters. Potentially add another guy that could be a starter to this group. And a guy an all SEC guy that should be a starter to this group. And then you got some young guys behind them that seem to be every bit as competent at those positions too. Obviously, they've got to prove themselves, but this should be your most consistent group. You talked about how I think when you look at this group, not just the starting group, when you look at this entire position group, it gives me hope for how Jeremy Pruitt builds a program because they went and addressed the biggest need right off the bat. Where didn't matter how good your quarterback was, didn't matter how good your running back was. If this group wasn't good, those groups weren't going to produce. It unfortunately begins and ends at the offensive line. And they went and addressed it, and you've added bodies to that group. And then you've added a ton of size and talent. And I mean, even building guys that were here. I mean, Brandon Kennedy came in as a guy that, didn't play a whole lot of football at Alabama. Transfers in, gets injured, unfortunately. Then bounces back and is one of your more consistent offensive linemen.
Yeah, I think it's huge. You talked about the kind of when Jeremy Pruitt got here, that was Tennessee's biggest weakness was offensive linemen. I mean, you had offensive linemen that we've talked about on the show a billion times that weighed about 270, 260.
An unacceptable weight for a SEC offensive line.
Right, and tackle bodies at that kind of weight. Yeah, it was ridiculous. And now in 3 years, he's had it and it's now one of your team's biggest strengths. And you have 4 former 5-stars on that starting offensive line, and then you have a 6-year guy in Brandon Kennedy who is a 4-star. There's a ton of talent, and there's a ton of depth. You mentioned bodies. Jameer Johnson has started games in his career at Tennessee. Jerome Carvin has. Kayron Calvert has. So you have a ton of depth. You were able to redshirt guys last year, which you haven't done that in forever.
Yep.
You're able to redshirt Jackson Lampley and Chris Akporogane. They hope to be reserves, kind of role players if need be. So yeah, I think there's a ton of talent, ton of depth, and that's what that you said it best. It starts in the trenches.
Yep,
that's where you win football games in the SEC.
Yeah, and to add a little bit more to that, yes, this is probably your biggest strength for this team, which is phenomenal because your probably biggest question mark at the offensive side of the ball is quarterback. I think everybody has faith in Eric Gray and Todd Chandler at that position group. Yep. You're not worried about that. Obviously, there's some question marks about the receiver group, but there's a ton of talent there that While I don't doubt there's at least quite a bit of talent through one guy specifically at quarterback. He's a freshman and playing transition from high school to college ball is a big jump. Not saying it can't be done. There's plenty of freshmen that have done it, but there's also more freshmen who haven't. And then you talk about a 5th year guy who's struggled.
Yep.
For more than his career than he's been comfortable. So the good news about that offensive line, you give him time, you protect him, does a lot for him. Gives him a lot of confidence potentially, and helps his team a ton. If we play a season, I hate saying that. I feel like I just need to stop. Like just commit to it that we're playing.
Yep.
I think whoever the quarterback is going to have a really, really good chance to be successful with the help of a great running back that could potentially bail them out of situations, and then an offensive line.
Yeah, absolutely. And they were good in protection last year. Like, yeah, we talked about Garantano getting beat up. In those first couple of years, he got beat up.
Oh, far.
But last year, this group only gave up 21 sacks in 13 games.
Yeah, last year's the kind of beat up he was getting was far different than the previous two.
And with, I think, Wanya Moore started 12 games at left tackle, and Darnell Wright started, I think, 7 games at right tackle. So you had 2 true freshmen, playing against some of the best defenses in the country. Great edge rushers, and were able to. They had their ups and downs. They took their lumps over the course of the season, but for them to just come in and play right away, Darnell Wright, I think what put him a little bit behind was Wanya Morris came in as an early enrollee, and then he was able to start more games. I think he was just more prepared to play for the SEC, not just because he's an early enrollee. I think he came from a better program in Grayson, so he's just more prepared. But I think another offseason with those 2 guys, I think Wanya Morris had a surgery, but should be better.
Yeah, I agree.
And they're coming off great freshman seasons.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you don't need them to be drastically better, but obviously you'd like to see gradual improvement at least.
Yeah.
But that group performed those 2 guys specifically performed pretty well. It would only be icing on the cake if they.
But got to be better in the rushing attack, and I think that's going to help with just utilizing Eric Gray more.
Yeah.
Adding Cade Mays is huge.
Yeah. Hopefully, and I think everybody expects him to get eligible. I know a lot of people are very nervous since Tennessee waited a while to submit that transfer, that waiver in. We'll see. I said it when that news first came out. The compliance office hasn't done anything to be like, yeah, they're lazy or stupid or incompetent. So just wait and see and make your judgment if it doesn't happen.
Right.
Because they could have been getting their ducks in a row before they submitted it. Because submitting a form incomplete or not with sufficient evidence or whatever could drag out the issue a lot longer than if you just did it right originally. Maybe you needed some more time. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just guessing by the history that the compliance office has shown. If they get this one wrong, have at them.
Yep.
Have at them. But
yeah, if the NCAA doesn't approve Cade Mays, I mean, there's going to be a lot of doorsteps with some burning bags of poop on some doorsteps.
Do you know where Mark Emmert lives?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I do know.
Are you putting in a plastic bag, or have you learned to do
a
brown bag?
It's brown bag.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just making sure.
Yeah.
Just making sure. Justin Sanday said, "Is Alabama's head coach going to retire?" I thought I heard that somewhere.
He's a cyborg, so I doubt it.
Unfortunately, no. Maybe you heard that in a dream, because I think I've had a couple dreams about that. But no. And then we're getting a lot of, I hope there's a season. Yeah, I need there to be a football season so bad. I'm just trying to, because the past couple months, and I know you're getting sports back, and it's been fun to watch the NBA. It's been fun to watch golf. The PGA Championship is going through a phenomenal round right now with a bunch of people chasing that number 1 spot. Could be a really good playoff happening. But there's just, college football is my favorite sport to watch, period. And specifically college football. I'm sure there'll be an NFL, and I'll watch every second of it that I can, but there's just something about college football, man. Something about Tennessee football specifically.
And Maction.
And Maction. Dude, Tuesday, what am I going to do with that Tuesday night Maction?
I don't know. You got anything else for offensive line?
I don't, unless you just, I feel like the starting lineup group's pretty predictable, but if you want to run through it real quick, we can.
I want to mention some of the other bodies we have. Riley Locklear, he started some games. And then you have, like we mentioned, Jackson Lampley, Chris Akperogene. Ollie Lane is another one. We actually had him on the show.
Yeah, friend of the pod.
Friend of the pod. And then you have incoming freshmen Javonte Spraggins, Jane Robinson, and Cooper Mayes. So kind of interior linemen.
I think there's going to be a lot of I think Cooper Mayes, I think there's more I think there's potential he could end up playing a lot. I just I think a lot of people are high on him, so I think there's potential there.
Yeah, and
I feel like he's probably one of the freshmen you would expect to, or young guys, I should say, expected to see the field a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think you'll utilize the redshirt rule. I don't know what that looks like with the 10 game schedule, but I think
it'll certainly depend.
Yeah,
I mean, it'll depend on a lot of factors, but
right. Yeah, I think those 3 guys are probably you're looking at to redshirt.
Well, I think there's a handful of older guys. Not saying that they're not good players or they haven't improved since Jeremy Pruitt and Will Friend, who whatever he was able to do last year completely changed than what he was able to do in the previous year. That have improved, but I think there's also a lot of guys who have hit their ceiling. That now that you're getting these young guys in here, you obviously, maybe not obviously, but you did utilize that red shirt on some guys last year. But I think there's some guys who have hit their ceiling that may get passed up by some younger guys this year. Because like I said, there's a lot more bodies than there were 2 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, I think Chris Akperogene would be a perfect example of that. We heard a lot about him, like during the spring and stuff during last spring and stuff like that. So, maybe he's a guy that can maybe pass some of those older guys. Not necessarily start, but if there was an injury or something, they could utilize one of those guys.
Yeah, I think the starting lineup's going to be pretty much as expected. If those guys see the field, it'll definitely be in a rotational. So
you think
sense.
Darnell Wright beats out Calvert for right tackle?
Yeah, I do.
Okay,
I do.
I agree with that. But I don't necessarily think like Jerome Carvin and Karon Calvert, those are 2 good guys to have.
Yeah. They have experience.
As backups.
They have experience, which helps them, gives them the benefit over the younger guys. But I also think you've probably seen the height of their football. Mm-hmm. I don't know how much of those guys could really improve at this point. But again, the entire offensive line improved last year when it seemed very bleak at that happening.
I think Carvin, he'll be a junior this year. He was just a sophomore last year, but started as a true freshman. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I mean, maybe Carvin's one that could maybe redshirt if Cade Mace and Trey Smith stay healthy throughout the entire year.
That's certainly an option. I think
Calvert's
already redshirted.
Right.
Trying to look, yeah. So yeah, it's possible. It's possible. And it's just nice to have a lot more bodies. It's nice to have a lot more options.
Oh yeah.
You're not throwing in you're not starting a walk-on dude who has no business being on a field anymore, like you were in 2016.
Like a former tight end.
Yeah. You had a Heisman candidate quarterback, and you were starting
Devontae Brooks or Devontae something like that. He was a former tight end in high school.
Doesn't surprise me. I'm shocked 0%.
You had to start him. Yeah, that was rough times.
Yeah, so at least you don't have that. I don't think I will be complaining about anybody that's chosen to start in the offensive line, whoever it is.
Right. If you beat one of those guys out, I mean, props
you did it. Yeah, you did it. I don't think there'll be any complaints.